gosh, hi. Can you see and hear me okay? Okay, awesome. Great. Well, it's so good to see you virtually, but it's good to see you. Other than just kind of talking to you on the phone, it's good to see your face. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. Are you drinking wine? Okay, I'm gonna drink some too. I'll go get some. It's 5 o'clock. We can do this. But thank you so much again for doing this. I know we talked a little bit about my project on the phone last week, but I can tell you a little bit more about it before we get started. So, like I said, I am interviewing people such as yourself about grief, about bereavement, about someone that they've lost in their life. And I'm collecting the interviews to make a script to perform, but I want this to be cathartic for you, so I will make names. Everything will be anonymous. I can change anything that you want me to change, people, places, the names. Let me know, that's fine. I just want you to be as comfortable as possible. Also, that being said, like if you ever need a break or anything like that, you need more water, tea, or like wine, cheers, by the way. Cheers. Let me know that too. So, yeah, any questions? That sounds okay? Okay. So if you're ready, cool. So go ahead and think about someone that you've lost in your life, someone that you'd like to talk to me about right now. Who would that person be, and can you tell me a little bit about who that person was?
Um, well, I first met her at a football game. I say like a high school football game. Like I know we had just graduated, but I was meeting like a couple friends that were there, and I saw her. We had mutual friends, and we just kind of like talked and goofed off and threw food at the cheerleaders. Um, Thought she was really cute, but like I didn't think I was gonna like see her again. Until like a couple weeks later, I was at the mall, like buying a CD, and all of a sudden, like I hear this scurrying coming up from behind me, and like this arm like slides underneath, like in between my arms, and this voice is just like, "Hey, be my boyfriend real quick. There's this really like weird dude behind me, just like you're my boyfriend, okay?" And I'm like, "Okay." And then we keep walking. She's like, "Ha ha ha, this is so much fun, like you're so funny." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is what the fuck, like what's your name again?" She's like, "Sarah, hey." I'm like, "Hey, I'm Jordan." She actually did that, and then like we keep walking, and I'm not really looking behind, but like she keeps looking behind, and she's like, "Okay, he's gone." um, but she doesn't take her arm out from my arm. um, yeah, it started off really great, like fiery, super passionate, but not in like a strictly sex kind of way. We just like gathering stories and figuring out what trouble we could get into, I guess. She looked like fucking Sandra Bullock. Like she was really beautiful, like super smart, really funny. She wanted to be a mortician, so she was kind of dark, but she would always say, "What can you do to make shit not really terrible for somebody else?" Um, I don't remember feeling anything as deeply as like I did or I felt throughout that first year. It's the last time like I remember feeling like I didn't have any weird context of like loving somebody or feeling affection or whatever. It was just like everything was real. Um, it was a year, a really good year.
Hey. Yeah. So my granddad and I were out in Wyoming, and we walked down to a creek, and we were just skipping stones. And I was about 4 at the time, and I look up at him and I say, "Granddad, are you God?" And he looks at me and he says, "Yes, Mary, and so are you." And I was about 4 at the time, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh. Like, my granddad is God. And like, then I'm God. Then like, everybody's God. And that story is really important for me and been kind of a thread for my life, because that's why I believe that kindness is the most important thing. And he really embodied that for me. He really proved that he was God too, because in that same trip he went out for a hike. And this is, 3-war veteran, firefighter. He's just a badass. Just a badass. And so he never gets lost, but he also doesn't like to use maps. And so it was basically where we were done, we were packing up to leave, and he's like, "I'll just meet you down there." He was lost for 2 days. He was lost for 2 days, and like, we all had to stay, and like the helicopters, just people like trying to find him. And then 2 days later, he just walks out of the woods like, "Hey, everybody." He probably like caught a fish with his hands and like slept with leaves, and it was just this other moment of being like, wow, like, you really are God. Oh God, I met Neil. It was the summer after my senior year of high school, so I had just graduated. And I was at a house party. I was playing beer pong, completely legal for a 19-year-old. And I saw this guy who was just being so cocky across the beer pong table for me. And I literally, I could not stand it. I was like, I have to beat this guy. And it got to the point where the two of us stopped letting our partners throw the ball. And Neil and I, we just battled it out on the beer pong table. And I don't know, we clicked.
She was staying the night at her friend's house, and I went over there, and we went out to my car, and we were listening to music, and The Cure's "Friday I'm in Love" came on, and it was Friday, and I had just found The Cure, and we just kind of sat there looking at each other. And we didn't say anything for 15, 20, 30 minutes, just kept going, just looking at each other. And I'm like, I love this girl. And I kissed her. And I knew I loved her then. Then we went to fucking Waffle House. You know what, I love you, let's go to Waffle House. So we went to fucking Waffle House, and we come back, and we just stayed up all night. We were just talking. We were telling each other all our fears, all the bad shit we had done up to that point, all the stuff we hated about ourselves. It was kind of like a game. I've done this, I've done that. Doesn't matter, you're beautiful. Doesn't matter, you're beautiful. We spent the night kind of building each other up in this way. And before she fell asleep, I told her I loved her. And God, I woke up early the next day. I couldn't sleep. I was in love,
Neil had already done 2 tours of Iraq. He was active duty Army and he was stationed in North Carolina. And he had managed to swing leave for Thanksgiving break. And I was home from college as well. So I woke up at 4:30 in the morning and I drove from Indianapolis to Richmond to pick Neil up. And we're on 70 driving back. And he's like, Penelope, pull over. And I'm like, okay. Like, I pull the car over. I'm like, what is it? Like, did we forget something? Like, do I need to turn around? And he was like, no. I just wanted to tell you how thankful I was that you came and got me from Richmond. I was like, Neil, I could have kept driving. And he was like, no, because I want to do this. And he grabbed my face and he kissed me. And it was then that I was like, yeah.
When I was 8, my best friend got hit by a car and died. And I was away at the time, so I had to come back for the funeral. They wanted me to be a pallbearer, which I thought was a strange thing to do to an 8-year-old kid. So there I am holding this coffin. And that was at the age of 8, when kids aren't supposed to die. And that struck me as remarkably unfair. And I guess it's one of those truisms that people tell you, life isn't fair. And I learned it very early. Very early. It's a good thing to learn, though, because it's true, it really is. So I've always been on guard, and I have been since I was 8. I've always been on guard for the next crappy thing to happen. And a lot of people who know me say I'm pessimistic, but I'm not. I'm one of the most optimistic people I know. But I'm a realist, too, and a skeptic. That's not necessarily something I'm proud of. This knowledge that something terrible is around the corner has been so present in my life since I was 8. My life has really been marked by deaths, and some have made me stronger is such a simple way of putting it. But there's an armor I have that a lot of people don't. I know from dealing with friends and family and that sort of thing that I'm emotionally a lot stronger than most people I know. So when my mom died and my dad died, I knew I could handle this. Well, sort of. But I also knew that if I didn't handle it in a way that at least appeared powerful and strong, that a lot of people would really collapse. They were depending on me.
Daddy was in the Navy. He had gone and he had lived life and he enjoyed it. He got into what he called the last bar fight he would ever start in Okinawa, Japan. He had a Jack and 7-Up for breakfast. Got into a fight with the guy at the bar. Whole bar breaks onto a fight. And next thing you know, somebody falls on his knee and breaks Daddy's leg. And there's a photo that my brother has of Bob Hope and the evangelist Billy Graham visiting him while he was over there. This is in the Vietnam War. That's why he was over there. Never really saw any action. But there's a photo of Bob Hope and Billy Graham visiting him while he was in the hospital because he got into a bar fight. I'm sure he left that part out. But this is just the kind of guy that we're talking about. He was just this good old boy. Really smart. But he had these interesting eccentricities about him where you'd think he was out of his mind. But that was just him. That's just the way he did stuff. I was his youngest. The stories from my siblings of how he raised them very strict, very stern, very harsh with them. He mellowed out with me.
I guess you could say. Yeah, we were very close. If he'd ever call you, he'd leave you this really short voicemail message, something like, Johnny boy, you better pick up the phone when I call you. Or, Johnny boy, pick up your damn phone. Every time. We loved each other very much. He had diabetes. He had it my whole life, but it wasn't the genetic version. I forget what kind it is, but it's basically not living a healthy lifestyle. Basically, it's whatever. So he had diabetes. He was able to control it for a good amount of his life. Is this okay? Is this the kind of thing you're looking for?
I'm going to put some water on for tea. Just give me 1 second. Yeah? All right. Yeah, so I don't know if you knew this about me, but I grew up in a funeral home. Like my dad's a mortician. He's still a mortician, and we literally lived upstairs. So I grew up surrounded by death. Like it was totally a normal thing for me. And I didn't think that was weird as a kid until I got a little bit older and started making friends, and they were skeptical about coming over to my house to play because my house came with an embalming room, you know? But I did make a couple friends, don't get me wrong. I had a friend named Susie who would come over to play, and sometimes we'd even, like, play hide and seek in the caskets. Oh, yeah, like which one am I gonna pop out of next? Yeah. I used to play pranks also. I used to play pranks on the new employees, especially, of the funeral home. So where we lived, it was upstairs, and it was down the hall from the organ room. And I was just short enough at the time that when I sat at the keys of the organ, you wouldn't be able to see me if you were in the chapel looking up at the organ room window. So I'd go around to the window, and I'd get on my little tippy toes, and I'd wait for the new employee to come in, and then I'd run back around and bang on the keys really hard and freak them the fuck out. And oh my god, there was one time where this guy actually like fell over one of the pews and like tripped and fell down. So I guess I would haze them in this way. But honestly, I really loved the most the performance aspect of funerals. Like I loved getting all dressed up, and my dad would sometimes let me pass out candles before the services, and I'd sit there and listen to the stories of the loved ones that had passed. Oh, and the overwhelming smell of flowers at night. Like to this day, I can't smell flowers without thinking of my dad and the funeral home that I grew up in. I'm gonna go grab that tea. I heard it go off. So yeah, it's so interesting to me. Like I grew up, and it was totally normal to talk about death. Like my dad would just bring it up and nonchalantly in conversation. Like, who died today, Dad? Oh, I was working on this suicide. Like, it was totally normal. And I didn't think it was strange, but as I grew up, I realized how almost like taboo it was to everybody else in our society. Like, we don't really talk about death. It's not very present. So anyway, I think that's definitely a reason why I wanted to do this project, I think, is to get people talking about it more. But anyway, have my tea. Enough about me. Let's move on, speaking of which. And you can take your time with this next question, but can you tell me how your loved one died? Right. Cancer.
ever since my dad got sick, I knew it was the end. But he kept going through radiation and chemotherapy and all these things. And I kept telling him, because he was going through all these things, Dad, you really don't have to do this. It's really not going to make any difference, and it's putting you through hell. And he'd say, yeah, Tom, well, Tom, your mom really needs me to do this. And I'd say, Dad, you're allowed. Because he was the most unselfish person I'd ever known. And I was trying to make him selfish. And it didn't work. And it made me resent my mother a lot. Which isn't fair, because it was their thing. But I can't help it. I still have a fair amount of resentment towards what he had to go through that last year of his life.
Ultimately, the thing that ultimately caused his death, he had a sore in his foot. It was a diabetic sore, and he couldn't feel anything down there in his foot. So he basically let it fester. That led to him losing his big right toe. After multiple hospital visits, he was put on dialysis. And the average lifespan of someone on dialysis without a kidney transplant is about 2 years. So he was put on the donor list for that. But that's not without a realm of possibility for that to happen, He had another sore. It was worn into his foot, led to him losing his right foot. Eventually, he lost his other foot. By now, he's a shell of the man that he once was. His doctors say he'd been suffering pin strokes. Could have been as early as 2011. By now, it's 2014. Could have been having them for at least 3 years. His diet spiraled out of control. That was more of his doing than a symptom of the disease or whatever. He just never really liked doctors. He's still mad at the one that made him get heart surgery. But all these complications just kept snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And ultimately, he passed away. As he was doing dialysis, he had a heart attack. He was put in hospice for a certain drug or medication. Are you familiar with hospice at all? Yeah, so he was put in hospice for his heart, and ultimately it was his heart that gave way out of anything.
So it wasn't sudden, it was expected. However, it was kind of where he was going downhill all of a sudden, like about a month. And we all thought he had like a couple more years in him. My granddad he was my favorite person in the world. He's just the coolest guy ever. I remember the last time I talked to him, I actually sang to him over, it was this Jason Robert Brown song, Christmas Lullaby. I actually learned it like a couple months before, and I was actually able to sing it to him on the phone when he was still able to talk. But it was just, we were in the hospital wing, and he was hooked up with all the tubes, and it felt like almost like something spiritual was happening, and I felt the need to sing it to him. So I sat there for a long time, and I repeated it for a long time, and my whole family was there, so I know he heard me there.
Okay, so I'm gonna sit down. Yeah. So I guess I'll start by telling you about the last time I heard from Neil. So the last time I heard from Neil, even though we were broken up at the time,
we were still emailing back and forth at that point, and I hadn't been able to hear his voice in a while. I was still able to tell him that I loved him, and honestly, it was just a run-of-the-mill conversation. Like, he was getting ready to move sites, and he didn't think they'd be able to get internet up for a while. But I knew that came with the territory. I knew there'd be times when it can be like dark, as they call it. But it was on good terms. It was on amicable terms. It just really bugs me because I know if it hadn't happened, that things would be so different from what they are now. It'll be 7 years in August. That's weird to say. That's weird to think about. It'll be 7 years. It was in June that he told me he wasn't going to be able to talk anymore. And it was in August that I got the phone call. It was an IED. Nobody in his company, I forget what you call it, but nobody survived. Nobody came back. When I first heard it felt almost like all the wind had gotten knocked out of me. Like, I didn't want to hear it. Our friend Zach called me. And Zach never calls. Zach hates talking on the phone. So I didn't pick up because, for whatever reason, it's like I knew. And he left me this really short voicemail message. It just said, "Penelope, call me." And I called him back, and he picked up, and he didn't say anything to me. He was just crying. And I knew. God, I could tell you exactly what my hair looked like. I could tell you exactly what I was wearing. I could tell you everything. And I just sat. I just sat on my bed. And I just cried. Like I knew how much Neil meant to me. But the kicker was that later on they told me that he had photos of me in his helmet.
July 26th, 2003. So long ago, why the fuck would I be crying about this person now? July 26th, 2003, around 6 or 7 a.m. She died. It was in the morning. So, I got the news by a phone call in the morning when I woke up, but we had talked the night before. We were going to go on a date, and it escalated. And we started yelling at each other. I told her I didn't want to see her again. And she just sighed. And she sat there for a minute. She said she was sorry. And then she said that it didn't matter. Because whatever road you go down, I'm gonna be at the end of it waiting on you. Like you can say that, but I'm gonna be at the end of the road waiting on you. She said that. And I said, fine. Fuck you. Bye. I wake up to a phone call the next morning saying that nobody knew where she was, nobody could find her. So I get in my car. I'm about an hour away. And I'm driving, and I get another phone call from like her best friend at the time. Saying that she died because she was trying to come see me. Just as I was passing the rest area, they were still peeling her car off of it. I get to her house. And her whole family was there. And her grandmother spits at me. And they start asking me questions about her death. And I don't remember anything after that. Until I get a phone call from a friend inviting me over to his house, and I stop at a gas station, and I go in and I'm like, what's the strongest cigarettes you got? And they're like, Marlboro Reds. I want those. I never smoked before, but I smoked one on the way to my friend's house. And I walk in. And they all just kind of look at me. And I started feeling sick. So I go into the backyard. And I had never smoked before. I had another cigarette, but I had never smoked before, and these were Marlboro Reds. So I started crying and throwing up because I was buzzed, and no one said anything. And I laid down. We all laid down in the grass. And I look up at the stars. And there's no light pollution, nothing. It was just stars. And I just started crying. And I just kept saying, What did I do? What did I do? God, I miss her so much. I'll wake up soon. What did I do? I miss her so much. I'll wake up soon. But I didn't wake up. Sorry. That's a lot. That was that day. Oh, God. This must be pretty exhausting for you to hear all these sad things.
So I will tell you, I've lost people too. I had a boyfriend that died, and I lost my mother last year. So I think that was also a huge impetus for this project is I wanted to talk to other people, I guess, and talk to them about how their life has changed. I need more wine. I don't know about you, but yeah, I'll go get some wine. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so when I think now about Andrew, that was my boyfriend that died, I think about him every so often. He just pops into my brain. I think about him when I'm listening to music sometimes, or when I'm acting. He was really passionate about wanting to be an actor. And he was such a goofy, fun-loving guy. He just had this awesome energy about him. And he was a huge part of my college experience. So when I think about that time in my life, I automatically associate everything with him. I think about my mom all the time. I mean, I used to talk to her every day. So it'll be where I would go to pick up the phone to call her and realize that I can't. I think about her when something happens. I think about her when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm nervous, or just everything. Everything reminds me of her. Was your first year like that too? Like, how did you move forward right after it happened? That first year, it'd be where I'd see soldiers in the airport and like secretly hope it was Neil with like amnesia and his dog tags got messed up. You know, I still do that sometimes. There's still a really big part of me that loves him. It doesn't just go away, it doesn't just die with him. And I'm really glad it didn't, because for a while I really didn't feel like myself. You know, I think there are days where he gets pushed back a lot further than other things, but like he used to drive a white Mustang. So like every time I see a white Mustang, he immediately like comes right back into the forefront. Same with the song Your Guardian Angel by Red Jumpsuit Apparatus. Stupid. But yeah. And the song I Will Follow You Into the Dark by Death Cab for Cutie. It was the ringtone on his phone when I would call him. I will follow you into the dark. every time I listen to that song without fail, like I get teary-eyed. And I think that there are just some days where, for whatever reason, he just pops back into my brain. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, I think in the grand scheme of life, and the grand, like, file cabinet of life, sometimes files get pushed a lot further down, but they don't go away.
It's mostly happy now, and happy tears still flow with it. But like right after he died, and the image of him in the hospital, and I sang at his funeral somehow, he had a military service. I think I was just really angry. And that part's still difficult for me to talk about, just because like I wasn't my best self. Like I had just turned 21, and I went to Tanzania, and I was like drinking a lot, and like, but everything in Tanzania, like I wanted to tell him. And it wasn't until a couple of years later where like it happened so suddenly, like where I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was in rehearsal for a play, and I just started bursting into tears, and I didn't know why. But then I remembered it was April 3rd, the day he died. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't think this could happen. And then it happened again the next year too. I just kind of recognized it.
The hardest part for me is that my dad was such a vital, interesting, smart, sweet guy. And, you know, when I was a kid, like so many other kids, I thought my dad was like fucking Superman. You know, he could do anything, he could fix anything. And everyone loved my dad. You know, he was just this charismatic guy. And what strikes me as unfair, well, I try not to use the word unfair, because everybody's got a tough life. But what pisses me off is that the image of him for that last year of his life is so indelible in my mind at this point that it's hard to shake it. I have to force myself to remember him as that vital man, because he just wasn't at the end. And that's the part of death that's so unbelievably cruel, and I wish that weren't the case.
That first year, it'd start where I'd go to pick up the phone, tell him about something that's happened, and realize that I can't. Because like I said before, he was a very smart man. Ever since he was in second grade, he wanted to be a police officer. And he was. For 40 years, he was a police officer and chief of police. So it'll be something where I see something on the news or something with a legal tone to it, or I'll question its legality and want to ask him, oh, what's your thought on this? And realize that I can't. But I don't think my grief has changed, because I was able to brace for it. At the funeral, I didn't cry, which was weird because I expected myself to grieve with everybody else, but I didn't. I ended up being a strong one for the family. But I ended up grieving in my own way. I internalize things, like with anything stressful or significant or important. I internalize them, and I still do that to this day. So that's how my grief has manifested itself. So I'll tell you about this dream I had. It was a while ago when I was back in college. And I had this dream. So I was in my dorm room, and I get a knock on the door, and I open it. It's Sarah's mom. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, I thought you hated me. She says, no, there's somebody here that wants to see you. She moves out of the way, and it's Sarah. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how? Why? She said, no, I had to come back. I had to tell you some things. I'm like, oh man, there's so much I want to tell you. Like, life just hasn't been the same since you've been gone. She says, no, I'm scared for you. Let me show you why. And she sends her mom away. And then it shifts from like first person perspective to like third person perspective. So I see myself as she like leads me over to my TV, and I see myself as she touches the screen, and these images start flashing on it. It's so vague, like I don't remember what it was, but I start reacting to it like really violently. I just start screaming like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. She says, no, this is what's gonna happen to you if you don't learn to go on and stop doing this shit. What shit? You're dead. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. She's like, all right, well, I guess I'll go. And I'm like, no, you're staying. She's like, no, I gotta go. I'm like, no, you're fucking staying. She's like, all right, let's just see what happens then. And because I don't let her go, people stop dying. Everyone that's ever died before comes back. The whole world is now overwhelmed with like ghosts and people. And she keeps asking me because I keep making these people. She's like, you gotta learn to let me go. I'm like, no, there's no way I'm fucking letting you go now. Until like we're out for a walk, trying to navigate through all these ghosts, and the sky starts cracking. This bright white light just tearing through the sky, like everything was gonna end. And you know, everything was terrible. Like everybody's crying, teeth gnashing. It felt like everything was fire. She says, everything's gonna be lost if you don't learn to let me go now. I'm like, all right, fine, fuck. Let's just get this over with. And so she leads me to like this tower, and we climb to the top of it, and this tornado starts coming out of this crack in the sky. She says, all right, I love you, let me go. And then so I push her off the edge and into this tornado. And all the dead people, all the ghosts, like everybody disappears. She disappears. And I'm alone.
I used to have dreams about Neil. I'd have really vivid ones where, like, for a split second, I feel like he was, like, touching my arm. Those were the best. I really miss those. Sounds bad to say, but I do. You know, for a while, I thought it was Neil visiting me, and it kind of confirmed what, like, I'd always believed. So as a Jew, you're raised not to believe in like a heaven or a hell. You're raised to believe that the soul technically stays with the body, which in my mind like sucks. And so I refuse to accept that. And so I've always been a firm believer, not in like a heaven or a hell, but that your soul leaves its body and it's a spirit. And the fact that I could feel Neil's presence kind of like confirmed that for me. So yeah, there'd be times where I'd like wake up and for like a split second I'd feel like he was like touching my arm or like lying in bed next to me. So as Jews, you're raised to believe that your soul technically stays with its body in this box in the ground for eternity. Like when a Jewish person dies, first of all, it's a closed casket, almost always. Second of all, it's literally 48 hours because they want them in the ground as quickly as possible. That is terrifying to me.
God, Christians are stupid motherfuckers. Like, I hate Christians so much. I hate them so much. They're like the worst fucking people. Like, our way to God is the right way. Like, that's when conviction is deadly. But after I kept dreaming about her, like, I had that conviction of, like, that there is something, like, I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't think it's, like, tied to anything that we know now. But I know that there is something. And I know that she's there. And I know that other people are there. And that makes death a a whole lot less scary for me. It actually kind of makes me look forward to it. God, I sound like a goth kid. Like, I cannot wait to die. Let me tell you the ways I want to die. I want to be drawn and quartered. I want to be drawn and quartered second. I want to be beheaded and then fucked. Oh God, I'm sorry. Like, next question. Let's just move on. Let's just forget that happened.
Okay. All right. Next question. Can you tell me how your grief has changed you into the person that you are now?
I don't think my grief has changed, but there is a part of me that holds back. That's an odd thing to say, but because I'm always on guard for the next crappy thing to happen, I'm ready for the phone call to say that my house burned down and my kids are in there, and it's not like it's omnipresent, but I think it's made me a little guarded and a little protective of myself, which is a terrible thing to be when you're involved with other people, and it's kind of a ridiculous way to live your life. And it's not like it's this overwhelming, like that's what I'm like all the time. But it's still kind of present. I'll catch myself thinking about him, and I'll probably tear up some, but I don't think I've ever, I have really broken down about him once before, but I think, with all the other people that have died since then, I think I've just kind of gotten used to it. Well, maybe not used to it, because you don't really ever get used to something like this, but it's not as hard, I guess you could say. Especially because I could see his health deteriorating, and I understood what was going on with him physically, that I was able to get used to the idea that he wasn't going to be around much longer. When I go home tonight, I might have a good cry about it. No, it's okay. I think we're meant to show emotion at all points, any points, happiness, anger, frustration, loss. Otherwise, we're bottling them up for no reason. So, yes, it will suck if I do cry about it tonight, but that's just a part of life,
My life has changed in that I actually experienced depression, which I didn't really know what that was before he died. Like, I was able to recognize it in other people, but I didn't really know what, like, that sense of, like, deep depression really was, which then kind of lifted me up to be there for other people too. And I think that I learned that from his death, that it's okay to let go of control. Like I couldn't control that he was gonna die. I couldn't control my grandmother's tears. And so I think that I learned that from his death, that it's okay to let go of control as long as you're safely, doing what you can for yourself.
I haven't felt anything that intensely in so long that it kind of makes me angry that I haven't even felt it. Yeah, I'm just getting angrier. Like, somebody I love dies, and I'm, like, pissed off at him for leaving. Like, fuck you for leaving on your own fucking time. Like, it should have been me first. No, I didn't die again? Like, fuck. It's just that nobody knows her out here. Nobody knows the story. Nobody knows any of that. That just sucks, because, like, she was generally, like, a really sweet, wonderful person. But nobody will know her. The world just doesn't seem right. Like I made a band that was named after her, and I wrote songs about her for like 10 fucking years. My whole life was tied to her, and like all the events that happened after her death and all the shit that happened to me afterwards was like tied to her death. Everything I loved, everything I did was just tied to her, and I just got tired of it. I never really decided to live. And that's probably not what she would want.
And now I'm with Trevor, who is wonderful. Trevor hates it when I talk about Neil. I don't know. His family deals with death really weirdly. So they take photos at funerals of like the body in the casket and of like the flower arrangements and of the displays. Like there are pictures of his embalmed grandmother in his cell phone. And his mom is like, oh, well, they're gonna want these someday. Why? So honestly, I think it was just the way he was raised. I don't know, like, oh my God. So his cousin committed suicide by shooting himself in the stomach, and it was an open casket, and there's his mom just like snapping photos with a digital camera. And like, oh my God, Chelsea, I was so uncomfortable. And like, the worst part is like all these people that were there that like don't know that like these weird people do this. Like, and I'm thinking ahead, like, if Trevor and I ever get married, I'm seriously going to have to request that his mother not take photos at any of the funerals she attends.
I think I have a lot less tolerance for time wasting now. Which I think is also in part a function of my age, too. You know, I'm realizing that there's a lot more life behind me than in front of me. So if I meet people in their 30s or older, you still get a pass if you're younger, which is to say my students and stuff. It'd be boorish of me to expect them to be on the ball. I certainly wasn't at that age. But if I meet people my own age who are wasting my time, I can be fairly abrupt. I can't be bothered. There's just too much stuff to do. There's too many more interesting things to do. And my time is, I mean, Jesus, it's a cliche, but it's so true. Time is worth so much. That's what I learned. That seems to be the gift that my father gave me. Just be present. So I'm trying to pick that up and carry it a little bit. I'm trying to be that more as a husband, as a father, as a friend. Just be present. I'm still hurting, though. That surprises me. That's the shocker to me. How unbelievably present in my life my father still is. I mean, day to day, he's still the first thing that I think of when I wake up in the morning. And it's been almost 2 years. And sometimes I feel guilty that I haven't even begun to deal with my mother's death yet. You know, like, she's gonna have to wait. Like, I can't do both. And I'm kind of waiting for the time when I can transition, I can have both. But I'm just not there. That surprises me. When my mind is idle, that's the thought that pops into my head to the exclusion of anything else. You know, I used to think about women a lot. I think a lot of men do. Or the other usual nonsense that's almost completely vanished from my way of thinking at this point. And I wonder if it's gone for good. You know, at this point, it probably is. Had you met me 10 years ago, and then not seen me, and then met me again today, I think it would surprise you. There was a lightness to me then, almost a casual flippancy, like I could get away with anything kind of thing. There was still a little teenager in me. It was just but this is starting to sound like therapy.
I think I became aware of how selfish I was, how self-centered like everybody is. Like I learned what it meant to be an adult then, even though I wasn't like an adult then. But I kind of learned that you have to go through shit not to be an asshole. And you learn how to connect with people. It's not the act of death itself, it's the echoes afterwards that you learn to deal with, and the violence of having someone ripped from your life and how it reverberates through other lives. It's what you do with it. Like, what good can you do because you've experienced this?
When someone you love dies, it's impossible not to change. There's a pain that you carry around with you for the rest of your life, and it changes and fluctuates, and it can become lighter at times, but it doesn't go away. After Andrew died, I had to move home to be with my family. I couldn't face life anymore. Life just seemed so bleak. But little by little, I kind of dug my way out of that hole without really realizing it. I clung onto every little glimmer of happiness until little by little my pain was easier and easier to learn to deal with. Because you don't have a choice. You really don't have a choice. Are you going to spend the rest of your life hiding under this rock, crying? No. Sooner or later, you have to relearn how to live your life again. And yeah, there are still times when I think about Andrew and I might cry or hurt or miss him. But when I think about him, I'm also able to smile too now. And it took me a long time to get there. I can't smile about my mom yet. I just can't. Sometimes I wonder what she would say to me if she were here. She was always my advice giver, and she had these sayings. One was, always do more than is expected of you. There was another one. Every morning she would tell me to choose happiness. So she'd say, you're going to make it a great day. And I'd say, I'm going to make it a great day. She would tell you when she loved you that she loved you to infinity. I'd like to hope that if she were here right now, I think she'd tell me that she loved me. And I hope she'd be proud of me. And what would I say to her? How the hell did you miss my wedding? If you're here now, how the hell did you miss my wedding? I think I'd tell him that I loved him, and I missed him, and I'd give him a nice hug. You know, I think that was one of my favorite parts about us is we'd have really, really deep, really meaningful hugs. So if he were here and that was it, I'd tell him that I loved him, and I missed him, and I'd give him a nice hug. Everything that comes to mind seems remarkably glib. And I know that would be disappointing to my father. But if he were here, I think I'd ask him if he heard us in those last few minutes when everything that was said was unguarded and urgent and honest. I think I'd tell him that I'm really fucking proud of him for going over there. You know, I think a lot of the time they're told like how much they're missed or how much it hurts other people that they were there, but like Yeah, and tell him that I'm really fucking proud of him. And that I really did love him. I still do love him.
I would have told her not to come over that night, not come see me. I would have said when she said, whatever road you go down, I'm gonna be at the end of it waiting on you. Instead, I'd say, like, you know what, you're right. I'm sorry. Let's listen to The Cure. Let me take you to Waffle House, or let me treat you like I know how you needed to be treated, and see what I've been doing since your life left me, and see what I've been doing since you've been gone, and see your life matter. But I can't say that. I'll never be able to say any of that. You want the memories to be strong, and you remember echoes of them.
What would I say to you, Granddad? I'd probably sing, that song. I'll never have the power to control the land or conquer half the world or claim the sun. And then it goes, in the eyes of heaven, my place is assured. I carry with me heaven's great design. Glory, I will bear the name of the Lord, and He will make me shine. And I will be like Mother Mary with a blessing in my soul. And I'll give the world my eyes so they can see. And I'll be like Mother Mary with a blessing in my soul. And the future of the world's inside of me. Yeah, I'd sing that to him.
Mom. I'm sorry if I ever took you for granted. I'm angry that you raised me to need you so much, and now that you're not here, I feel so lost. I'm sorry that I didn't fly back when I heard that you were sick. I want you to be happy, no longer tied to that body that held you back so much. God, I miss you. But honestly, I want you to know that I love you to infinity. And I live for you too now. So I will try to make every day a great day. When I act, when I perform, I'll think of you.
Allow others to be in control. Listen to my heart and my gut more.
I want to try to take better care of my health.
The band was named after her riding name.
Experience, the moments rather than jumping ahead.
I traveled. Whenever I see a white Mustang,
I will get on
Wikipedia. Resilience.
Faith into music, she always keeps it.
I talk about how fucking awesome it was.
Drink Bloody Marys for you.
Share stories.
I will try to always do more than is expected of me.
I share stories.
I will try to make you proud.
want the memories to be stronger. They keep remembering like echoes of them.